What if your survival depended entirely on whether you wore a shining suit of armor or carried a dagger behind your teeth? Tonight, we're setting aside dragons, prophecies, and conveniently heroic battle scenes, and sinking slowly, sleepily, into a medieval world where one life is forged in glory and the other is erased before breakfast. On one side, the knight, noble, visible, loudly clanking his way into legend with polished steel and inherited land. On the other, the assassin, silent, disposable, tucked between shadows, poisons and lies, paid just enough to never be remembered. Two paths, two purposes, same mud, same rats, same chronic lack of privacy. So get comfortable. No action scenes. No sword fights. Just the quiet unravelling of medieval reality. One polished helm and poisoned chalice at a time. We'll walk through their mornings, their meals, their missions, and eventually, their funerals. Though one gets a crypt, and the other gets a bag and a very shallow ditch. Now, pull up your hood, or tighten your gauntlets. We're stepping softly into a world where honour wears a sword, and silence carries a contract. Let's begin. What if you lived in a world where every day was a gamble between being stabbed for glory or stabbed in complete secrecy? In the grand spectacle of medieval Europe, life isn't fair, isn't clean, and certainly isn't subtle. And tonight, we're comparing two of its strangest survival strategies. On one end of the battlefield, we have the knight, proud, armoured, and performing chivalry like it's a badly rehearsed play he can't escape from. On the other, the assassin, silent, hooded, and somehow always 3 feet behind you, holding a poisoned needle and a grudge. These aren't fairy tales. No noble steeds galloping through fields of honour. No elegant rooftop duels under the moonlight. This is reality. Muddy, itchy, and constantly on fire in ways that surprise even the historians. The knight's life is written down in song and scroll. He's the shining symbol of virtue and loyalty, galloping heroically toward whatever poor soul has been designated the enemy this week. But behind that polished armour is a man who hasn't slept properly since his first joust, smells like damp wool and regret, and spends most of his time trying not to be stabbed by his own horse while peeing behind a tree. The assassin, by contrast, is not in the history books. He's in the margins, or under the table, or disguised as a nun. His life is all shadows and lies and backup identities scrawled in bad Latin. He moves through castles, brothels, monasteries, and alleys with the social grace of a rumour and the personal hygiene of someone who considers bloodstains part of the look. They don't know each other. They never meet. And yet, they walk the same plague-filled streets, sleep under the same flea-ridden sky, and share the same aching joints from crouching in weird positions for hours on end. Different paths, same blisters. Let's be clear, this isn't a hero's journey. It's a side quest with chronic chafing. We're not here for glory. We're here for the details, for the real, unromantic, disturbingly pungent truth behind two of the Middle Ages' most misunderstood professions. So forget what you learned from Hollywood. There are no slow-motion sword fights here, just a lot of heavy breathing, suspicious stew, and the creeping awareness that you forgot to tie your codpiece again. The knight wakes up in a drafty stone hall next to a fireplace that hasn't worked since Easter. His armour sits in the corner like an expensive exoskeleton judging his life choices. He's surrounded by squires, servants, and the faint scent of burning tallow and social anxiety. His back hurts. His feet hurt. His soul hurts, but in a noble way. Probably. He stretches, winces, and immediately regrets it. The assassin wakes up pretending to be someone else. Maybe he's Brother Elias, the monk who tends the garden. Maybe he's Marion, the ale seller with the suspiciously muscular hands. Maybe he doesn't remember which name he's using today. He rolls out of bed in a rented room above a stable and lands silently on a straw mattress that smells like damp secrets and dead dreams. Every move is deliberate. Every thought is survival. He doesn't yawn. He listens. These two lives could not be more different. One is surrounded by ceremony, banners, and honorifics that make everything sound way more impressive than it is. The other is surrounded by coded messages, escape tunnels, and poisons with names like Widow's Whisper and Regret Number 7. And yet both of them will die before 50. Probably sooner. The knight will be trampled, stabbed, or infected by an arrow wound no one bothered to clean. The assassin will be betrayed by a client, ambushed by a rival, or slip on a poorly waxed convent floor while escaping through the cloisters. Dignity is optional. Death is guaranteed. Still, they each have their roles. The knight is the public face of feudalism, the smiling mascot of the ruling class, wrapped in metal and draped in ancestral trauma. His job is to fight, to protect, to uphold virtue, which mostly means killing people with better ideas and worse armor. The assassin is the system's dirty little secret. He's the knife behind the throne, the quiet solution to political inconveniences. When a duke needs to disappear, or a document needs to unexist, the knight holds the feast, while the assassin slips in through the kitchen and leaves through the window, assuming the window wasn't trapped. The knight rides a horse. The assassin poisons one. The knight shouts, "For honor!" before charging into battle. The assassin mutters, "For payment!" before vanishing into the alley fog. Both bleed, both limp, both occasionally wonder if it was all worth it while staring into a bowl of congealed onion porridge. And both stink. Let's not forget the smell. The knight stinks like horse sweat, chainmail mildew, and whatever's rotting inside his helmet padding. The assassin smells like damp leather, smoke, and faint traces of herbal death. They've never met, but if they ever crossed paths in the market square, they'd instinctively avoid standing downwind of each other. But maybe that's the point. These aren't glamorous roles. They're just different brands of survival, written by a world that runs on violence, fear, and really confusing land laws. One survives by being seen. The other survives by never being seen at all. Tonight, we'll follow both of them, side by side, step by cursed, uncomfortable step. We'll watch them eat, sleep, suffer, train, fight, fail, and flirt badly with people who may or may not be spying on them. We'll climb inside their armor. We'll sit in their shadows. We'll trace the long, aching lines of a life that is equal parts duty, deception, and lice. Because that's the real history. Not the battles, not the names in the scrolls, but the moments in between. The chafing, the waiting, the whispered regrets. The endless cycle of sharpening blades and wondering if today is the day it all ends in a ditch. So curl up, breathe deep, and know this. Whether you were a knight or an assassin, your life in medieval Europe was one long experiment in discomfort, danger, and very limited dental care. And you? Sitting there in modern comfort, sipping tea that wasn't brewed in a cauldron next to a dead rat. You've already won. No chainmail, no shadow contracts, just a story to fall asleep to. So now you know where they stand, one in the light, one in the dark, both in need of a good bath. But before they can clash steel or vanish into shadows, they have to wake up first. Let's peek into their mornings. A trumpet here, a knife under the pillow there. Hit subscribe now and let the duel between knight and assassin carry you into sleep. There's no snooze button in the Middle Ages. No soft chime from a sunrise alarm app. No friendly robot voice reminding you to stretch and hydrate. In this world, mornings come with no warning and even less mercy. And depending on whether you're a knight or an assassin, you either wake up to the sound of fanfare and the smell of cooked pork, or silence, shadows, and the faint realization that someone else in town is wearing your face today. Let's start with the knight. He wakes to trumpet blasts echoing off damp stone walls like someone's trying to summon the sun through sheer optimism. It's barely dawn. The fire's gone out. His bed, a mattress the size of a wagon stuffed with straw and unfulfilled dreams, has left a sharp reminder in his lower spine that nobility does not come with lumbar support. His joints crack like old wood. His knees scream in Latin. A squire stands nearby, nervously holding a basin of freezing water and trying not to look directly at the royal thighs. Another servant is already polishing boots. Another one is arguing with the chambermaid about whether that smell is coming from the armour stand or the knight himself. No one is sure. Everyone is cold. This is waking up in a castle, less a peaceful ritual and more a communal exercise in embarrassment and passive-aggressive towel handling. Now shift perspectives. The assassin wakes up alone. Technically. There are rats, of course. And the landlady's cat, who's decided the assassin's bed of straw and guilt is the warmest place to vomit every night. But no roommates, no trumpet. Just silence and the faint creak of a floorboard that may or may not mean someone's about to break through the window with a grudge and a crossbow. He doesn't stretch. He doesn't yawn. He lies there, perfectly still, mentally cataloguing everything in the room that could be used as a weapon, disguise, or exit. Blanket, window rope, spoon, eyeball removal tool, bread crust, distraction for a dog. Today, he's Jareth, a scribe's assistant with a facial scar and a stutter. Yesterday, he was Milo, a mute monk. Tomorrow, depends on who survives breakfast. Meanwhile, the knight is groaning his way out of bed like a log, reluctantly accepting its fate as firewood. He swings his feet onto the icy stone floor and immediately regrets every decision he made the day before, particularly the duck wine sausage incident that's currently performing a full opera in his stomach. His squire helps him stand, because nothing says warrior of God, like a 19-year-old helping you put on socks while whispering apologies for stepping on your toe. He splashes his face with water so cold it might be partially haunted. Then he dries it with a towel that was last washed during the Second Crusade. Soap exists, technically, but it's reserved for feast days, royal weddings, or when someone has visibly started to rot. Most days, he just rubs his face aggressively and hopes no one comments on the smell coming from his collar. Back at the inn, or is it a stable? It's unclear. The assassin is already dressed. He sleeps in his clothes, not because he's lazy, but because his lifestyle does not include the luxury of pyjamas, or unclipping a belt, or looking comfortable, ever. He rolls his blanket, checks his blades, and slips a tiny vial of poison into his boot, next to the one with dried blood and the label, Emergency Exit. His hygiene routine is economical. One cloth, one splash of water from a questionable jug, one sniff of the armpits, followed by a shrug that roughly translates to acceptable by medieval standards. He brushes his teeth with a twig, rinses his mouth with vinegar, and eats half a boiled egg he's been hiding in a sock since Wednesday. He chews slowly. There is no joy in it. The knight, on the other hand, has breakfast brought to him by someone who calls him my lord and pretends not to notice the pinky toe poking out of his linen under-tunic. The meal is rich: bread, meat, dried fruit, and the vague threat of heartburn. He eats while listening to his steward read off a list of diplomatic complaints, training drills, and rumours that his cousin is raising troops again. The knight nods, pretends to care, and mentally prepares to spend the day sweating inside a tin can, while people shout about honour and harvest tithes. Both men, in their own ways, are preparing for battle. The knight's battle is loud and public, involving horses, banners, and audience members. The assassin's battle is quiet and messy, involving rooftops, lies, and sometimes a goat. But they share the same early morning reality. No privacy, no peace, and a rising suspicion that today might be their last day with all 10 fingers. And the smell. Let's talk about the smell. The knight smells like old leather, wet wool, and ambition. His armour has soaked in sweat from so many failed crusades that it now counts as a sentient being under local law. His breath? A complex blend of onions, bad wine, and the ghost of a swan. His hair? Combed by someone else, sure, but also home to at least 4 fleas named after famous saints. The assassin, by contrast, smells like damp cloaks, burning lamp oil, and lies. His boots have never dried. His hood smells like ashes. His fingers smell faintly of mint, used to mask the scent of poison, and strongly of fear. He doesn't sweat out of nervousness. He sweats because running through catacombs in leather pants is not breathable workwear. And roommates? Let's compare. The knight has a full support staff: squire, steward, cook, stable boy, armourer, occasional bard, and that one guy who just keeps following him around saying "My lord" and offering unsolicited sword-cleaning services. The assassin has no one. His roommate is paranoia. His best friend is a rusted lockpick. His social circle is a rotating cast of tavern informants and the occasional pigeon. By mid-morning, the knight is armoured up, grunting his way onto a horse that hates him. His helmet fogs instantly. His gloves itch. Someone forgot to oil his sword. He's ready for battle, ceremony, or both. He waves at villagers. They cheer. He doesn't smile. His teeth hurt. The assassin is already halfway across town, face hidden, steps silent, knife tucked where no guard thinks to check. He's not famous. No one waves. But someone will be dead by noon, and he'll be gone before the soup cools. Both started their day sore, tired, and in a mild existential crisis. But only one has to spend the next 8 hours pretending that honour is a real thing and not just an excuse for unpaid overtime. The other? He's got a job to do. A name. A target. And if all goes well, a pouch of silver and one more night not being dead. And you? You get to stay in bed. No armour. No disguises. Just one blanket, one quiet room, and a perfectly respectable scent. So sleep well, and be grateful. Tomorrow, you don't have to kill anyone before breakfast. You've seen how they rise, one with aching joints and public ritual, the other with practiced lies and private dread. But before either of them can get to the business of surviving, they need to suit up. And in medieval Europe, getting dressed isn't just a routine. It's a threat. Let's be clear. This isn't fashion. This is preparation for mortality with buttons. You're not dressing for comfort. You're dressing for survival, intimidation, and the ability to dramatically fall over without rupturing your spleen too quickly. In medieval Europe, your outfit doesn't say who you are. It says how long you expect to live in your current line of work. The knight's wardrobe is a portable prison of glory. His gear is heavy, shiny, loud, and aggressively symbolic. His closet consists of 3 things: metal, more metal, and the occasional itchy underlayer designed to soak up every ounce of dignity he has left. The assassin, on the other hand, wears silence. Layers of soft, dark cloth. Pockets within pockets. A hood that hides his face, his thoughts, and the fact that he hasn't done laundry since Candlemas. Let's start with the night. Getting dressed is not a solo event. It's a group activity involving squires, straps, prayer, and at least one person whispering, "Sorry, I'll tighten that again." First comes the linen undershirt, already stained with the sweat of battles past, and probably some mutton. Over that, padded armour, known as a gambeson, a quilted torture device made to absorb blows and trap heat, like a wool-covered oven glove. It weighs more than a child and smells worse. Then come the layers of metal: greaves, cuisses, vambraces, pauldrons, breastplate, backplate, helmet, and gauntlets, each one meticulously buckled, laced, or hammered into place, while the knight stands motionless, arms out like he's auditioning for an extremely dangerous nativity play. Every piece clanks, every joint pinches, and heaven help him if he sneezes before the visor is down, because there is no airflow in that helmet. None. He will stew in his own facial humidity until his enemies or his nostrils surrender. And then there's the tabard, the outer layer, embroidered with his family crest, probably a lion, or a bird, or something pretending to be a lion-bird hybrid of doom. It's colourful, regal, completely useless. But important, because if you're going to die in a field, you should at least be easily identified by your coat of arms and the way your blood stains it in the shape of irony. The assassin, by contrast, dresses alone, always, silently, one eye on the door, one hand on the dagger. His base layer is a close-fitting tunic, dark, breathable, and designed not to snag on nails, fences, or guilty consciences. Over that, a leather jerkin, well-worn, pocketed, and probably stolen. His trousers are snug enough not to flap, loose enough not to restrict a flying knee to the throat. No metal, no bright colours, nothing that would catch the moonlight or reflect in a wine goblet during a late-night infiltration. His boots are soft-soled, silent, and smell faintly of herbal oil and desperation. He ties his belt tightly, too tightly, because it holds everything. Pouches, lockpicks, throwing knives, vials of poison with names like Silent Farewell, and definitely don't drink this. He carries 5 weapons at all times. Minimum. 1 hidden in his boot, 2 on his hips, 1 in his sleeve, and 1, just in case, sewn into the lining of his hood. That one's his favourite. It doesn't have a name, but it's the reason he's still breathing. Barely. The knight's sword is ceremonial, massive, heavy enough to be impressive, but not quite practical unless your enemy politely stands still and waits their turn. It's forged by the best blacksmith in the region, blessed by a bishop, and engraved with Latin phrases no one can actually translate. He carries it in a scabbard, engraved with scenes of heroic conquest and mild overcompensation. The assassin's blade is not ceremonial. It's small, sharp, covered in a black coating to hide the shine. It lives under his sleeve and comes out faster than guilt at confession. He doesn't name his weapons. That's how attachments form, and attachments get you killed. Knights also wear chainmail. Miles of it. Thousands of metal rings painstakingly stitched together to ensure that if you're stabbed, you at least bleed slower. It weighs more than your average war pig, and requires an assistant, a pulley system, and a deep reservoir of patience just to put on. Once it's on, you can't sit, or bend, or breathe with any dignity. Assassins wear mobility. Their armour is knowledge. Their weapon is silence. They could climb a castle wall, hide in a chimney, and kill you with a pen nib before you even finish buttoning your doublet. Their outfit is built for motion, jumping, ducking, dodging, vanishing. The only downside? No padding. When they fall hard, but quietly. Let's talk about helmets. The knight wears one that doubles as a portable echo chamber. It's heavy. It obstructs vision. It amplifies every breath into a personal storm cloud of condensation and panic. And once it's on, you can't hear anything except your own thoughts yelling, "Why is it so tight around the ears?" Taking it off is a 2-person job. Putting it on correctly is a miracle. And tilting it back just enough to drink? That's how you chip teeth. The assassin doesn't wear a helmet. He wears a hood, shadowy, mysterious, occasionally damp. It keeps his face hidden, his intentions concealed, and his lice moderately contained. If it slips, he dies. If it stays on, he disappears into the crowd like a whisper made of wool. And then there's the emotional weight of these outfits. The knight's gear tells the world, I am powerful, I am brave, I am sweaty. It's a walking billboard of status, nobility, and a deeply concerning number of joint problems. But it's also a target. Everyone knows who he is, and where to aim. The assassin's outfit tells the world nothing. That's the point. He passes through towns, castles, convents, and battlefields without leaving a trace. No emblem, no house colours, just the smell of smoke, the shadow of movement, and the vague suspicion that something important just went missing. One fights to be seen, the other kills to stay invisible. Both are dressed for death. And here's the cruel joke. Neither of them is comfortable. The knight itches in 12 places he can't reach. The assassin sweats through fabric that hasn't dried since November. Both smell like regret. Neither has had a decent laundry day in years. And if either of them trips, their outfit will kill them faster than the enemy. You? You wear pajamas. You have elastic waistbands. You have slippers that don't squish. No daggers. No buckles. No chance of being mistaken for an outlaw when you walk into the bakery. You win. But tonight, let's not think about comfort. Let's think about the armor we wear when everything is dangerous. The choices we make to survive in a world built on blood, hierarchy, and hideous tailoring. And tomorrow, we'll step into their lives again, fully dressed, mostly ready, and one loose strap away from disaster. Sleep tight. Try not to dream about buckles. Armor's on. Daggers are hidden. Everyone's itchy. Now it's time to train, whether it's sparring in full plate on a sun-blasted field or tumbling through shadows like a morally flexible spider. Let's see how these two medieval specialists sharpen their deadly resumes. Becoming a medieval knight isn't something you just fall into. It's not a hobby. It's not a phase. It's a lifelong subscription to physical agony, emotional suppression, and armor that slowly reshapes your skeleton. Likewise, becoming an assassin isn't something you put on your resume next to likes long walks and proficient in candlelit bookkeeping. It's a craft, a creed, a way of life best learned in darkness, whispered in code, and punctuated by the occasional, "Oops, that wasn't a training blade." Both knights and assassins train, constantly, obsessively, painfully, but one does it in a public courtyard with an audience of squires and judgmental falcons. The other does it alone, in a cellar full of knives, poisons, and secrets that have never seen sunlight, or a health inspector. Let's begin with the knight. He starts young. At 7, he's ripped from his warmish manor bed, kissed on the forehead by a mother who immediately forgets his name, and sent to live in another lord's household as a page. For the next 7 years, he learns the basics. These include how to polish armor with bread, how to get kicked by a horse without crying too loud, and how to run errands without dropping the lord's favourite goblet into the moat again. At 14, if he's still breathing and has at least 3 unbroken limbs, he becomes a squire. This is the fun part. By fun, we mean constant, humiliating drills performed while an older knight yells, "Use your legs," in Latin, and throws things. Sword training happens in the courtyard, in full view of everyone, servants, pigeons, and that one bard who writes songs about people falling down. The squires spar with wooden swords, which are somehow more painful than the real ones. They swing, they miss. They hit each other in the groin more often than statistically reasonable. Helmets fly off. Teeth rattle. A chicken screams in the background for unrelated reasons. It's chaotic, sweaty, and very, very loud. Discipline for knights comes from repetition, hierarchy, and the looming threat of being stabbed by your instructor for asking too many questions. You do the same drills every day: footwork, stance, parry, charge, and the extremely technical "don't die" move. The more advanced your training, the more likely it ends with you face first in mud, while your opponent plants a boot on your chest and declares victory using vocabulary. He doesn't fully understand. You clean your master's sword, you carry his armor, you help him into the bath, which, unfortunately, does not mean you can leave the room. You are soaked in sweat, humility, and that one specific kind of shame that comes from trying to mount a horse in front of a girl and immediately falling off. Now shift the light. Move underground. The assassin trains in silence. There is no courtyard. There is no audience. There is only a locked door, a flickering candle, and the quiet clink of someone checking if a blade still balances on their fingertip. No one is watching, but you feel watched. Always. Training begins not with weapons, but with stillness. You must learn to breathe so no one hears it. Walk so the floorboards forget you stepped on them. Watch without being noticed. Listen to conversations that stop when the door opens. Disappear in a room without leaving it. It's not about speed, it's about absence. Then come the weapons. Daggers first. Small, fast, personal. You learn to aim for tendons, not hearts. Death is a luxury. Disabling is the goal. Silence is the rule. Your mentors are not friendly. They don't teach. They demonstrate. And if you fail to mimic them perfectly, you might lose a fingertip, or gain a scar, or get a lesson in humility from a wire trap you forgot was there. There are no instructions, only consequences. You train blindfolded. You crawl through tunnels rigged with bells. You drink small doses of poison to build immunity, or die. Survival rate, unclear. The last apprentice left a shadow on the wall no one likes to talk about. Assassins don't graduate. They vanish. One day you're the boy who limps. The next, you're just a whisper. Your name is gone. Your face forgotten. Your first assignment is not a test. It's a final exam with no feedback form. Either you complete it, or someone else completes you. Back to the knight. His survival rate? Also not great. Many squires die in training. Broken necks, kicked by war horses, fell off the battlements trying to show off. Sword wounds, arrow wounds, mysterious stew-related incidents. Those who survive get knighted in a ceremony involving kneeling, blessings, and a sword tapped on both shoulders, while everyone pretends not to notice that your eye is still swollen shut from last week's tournament. With the title comes the expectation. Defend the realm, uphold virtue, maintain impeccable posture. You're a walking symbol, a public ideal, a glorified bodyguard in metal pants. People expect you to be brave, honourable, and willing to die gloriously in battle, or at the very least, dramatically on a drawbridge. The assassin has no ceremony, no kneeling, no congratulations. Just a nod from a mentor who may or may not try to kill you in your sleep next week. Your reward is anonymity. You're trusted now, with secrets, missions, lies, and the expectation, never be seen, never fail, never leave a trace. Knights train to be legends, assassins train to be ghosts. One is remembered in song, the other is never mentioned again. But both are exhausted, both are scarred. Both have injuries they don't talk about and nightmares they refuse to name. They bleed the same. They limp the same. They sit by the fire the same way, stretching tired hands and wondering if this is the year it finally catches up with them. So yes, training is different. One loud, ritualistic, and covered in armor polish. The other quiet, psychological, and slightly toxic, literally, due to the mushrooms involved in stealth potion brewing. But both are built on discipline, pain, repetition, and the absolute certainty that if you stop moving, someone else will take your place. Permanently. You? You trained once, in high school, for a 5K. You quit halfway and decided cardio was for people being chased in medieval alleys. You were right. Sleep easy tonight. You don't have to crawl across a field of broken glass to prove yourself, or duel a former mentor who trained you to stab without blinking. You've already passed the test. You live in the future, so close your eyes. Tomorrow, the knight will spar until his wrists shake. The assassin will balance on a rooftop until his legs go numb. But you get to roll over, stretch, and do absolutely nothing lethal. Well done. After all that training, bruised shins, pulled muscles, mild existential dread, our knight and assassin are starving. But mealtime means very different things depending on your employer, your ethics, and whether your last meal tried to kill you first. You are what you eat, which, in the Middle Ages, means you are mostly fear, bones, and bread that could shatter a bishop's jaw. When it comes to food, knights and assassins both get a plate. But only one of them trusts it. One eats under chandeliers. The other eats next to mould. Neither is truly satisfied. Let's begin with the knight. Dinner is a display, an event, a choreographed, artery-clogging performance held in a great hall with a ceiling so high birds occasionally drop things into your soup. The knight doesn't dine alone. He dines alongside nobles, clergy, questionable cousins, and that one troubadour who's been singing about gout for 4 days. The table is long. The roast is whole. The mood is tense. Goblets clink, platters steam, and somewhere a servant quietly panics because someone just spotted a hair in the pheasant. Again, knights eat by rank. If you're important, you sit near the host. If you're not, you sit near the dogs. Literally. The dogs roam under the table, snapping up crumbs, bones, and occasionally someone's dignity when they go for seconds too soon. First course? Bread. Always. Thick, dry, and absolutely flavourless. It's used as a plate, a spoon, a napkin, and eventually a chew toy for the dogs. Butter? Rare. Jam? Forget it. You're lucky if you get soft crust and no visible beetle parts. Then comes the meat. Roasted boar, overdone venison, suspicious swan. It's dramatic, gamey, and seasoned with whatever the cook found that wasn't dirt. Sometimes there's a pie. Not a dessert, a meat pie. With bones still inside, because elegance is a myth and no one checks fillings in this century. Vegetables make a brief appearance, usually onions, occasionally leeks, never colour, boiled until grey and then slapped onto the plate like a guilty confession. You don't eat them for nutrients. You eat them because someone's watching. Then there's the wine. Sour, warm and cloudy, with things that should never be described aloud. It's the medieval version of hydration. The more important you are, the stronger your wine. The less important you are, the more watered down your regret. And yet, despite the grandeur, meals are political minefields. You can't eat too fast. That's peasant behaviour. You can't eat too slow. That's suspicious. You must nod at the right jokes, pass dishes to the right allies, and laugh when the Baron makes a pun about duck legs. That's only funny if you haven't slept in 3 days. Also, always assume the food might be poisoned. Knights don't trust easily. Not their enemies. Not their cousins. Definitely not the chef who used to work for the Duke who's currently laying siege to your cousin's land, which is why every meal includes a food taster. Usually a young servant, slightly underpaid, deeply paranoid, and possibly holding a grudge. Now shift focus. Move out of the hall, into the shadows. The assassin doesn't dine. He refuels. No candles. No fanfare. Just a quiet crouch behind a chimney and a stale hunk of bread that's been in his pouch since last equinox. His meals are small, portable, and ideally silent. Jerky. Hard cheese. A few dried berries that taste like regret. Maybe a crust of something resembling bread, if he didn't drop it during the last rooftop sprint. Sometimes he forages. This sounds romantic. It's not. It means rooting around for mushrooms that hopefully aren't hallucinogenic and berries that don't immediately try to kill you. One mistake and dinner becomes an autopsy waiting to happen. There is no second chance when your salad fights back. On a lucky day, he finds roasted meat. Not because he cooked it, but because someone else died next to it and no one's looking. He eats fast. Never both hands. One hand always on the dagger, always watching, always ready to vanish mid-bite if the wind shifts. Sometimes he eats in taverns, but only in the corner. Hood up, back to the wall, pretending not to exist while chewing slowly on stew that tastes like shoe water and has the texture of betrayal. And always, always, he checks the food. He smells it, prods it, waits to see if a rat dies nearby just from the aroma. He's been poisoned before, twice. One time it made him hallucinate that the Pope was a goat. The other time, he just woke up buried alive. Honestly, the goat one was worse. While knights use feasts to show power, assassins use food to survive. No performance, no etiquette, no pass the venison, just calories and caution. The assassin chews like every bite is a potential trap, because it might be. Let's compare calories. The knight consumes enough meat in one sitting to fuel 3 armies and a partridge. He's bloated, drunk, and slightly bleeding from the roast swan's beak that someone forgot to remove. He has gout. He doesn't care. He's full. That's what matters. Until he has to fight tomorrow. The assassin? Always slightly hungry. Not starving, just lean, agile, and fueled by adrenaline and dried fish. He eats to move, to think, to stay one step ahead of the man who definitely just walked past the chimney twice in the last 5 minutes. The knight burps into a goblet. The assassin swallows without sound. One toasts. The other listens. One fights after feasting. The other vanishes before dessert. But both understand one truth. Medieval food is a gamble. It might be old. It might be spoiled. It might be moving. It might have been seasoned with dirt. It might have once had eyes. It might still have them. And if it doesn't kill you directly, it will at least damage your trust in soup forever. You microwave things. You check expiration dates. You have snacks that come in resealable bags, and drinks that don't make you hallucinate an entire theology. You chew in peace. But tonight, you dine with danger. You taste medieval fear. Imagine this. You raise a goblet you didn't inspect. You bite into a pie you didn't question. You swallow stew made by a man who hasn't bathed since Pentecost. Now imagine doing that every day, with enemies across the table, and a dagger in your boot, just in case dessert turns into betrayal. Sleep well. You've earned your bland, peaceful, non-toxic sandwich. Tomorrow, the knight will face indigestion. The assassin will eat next to a corpse. But you'll wake up, open the fridge, and survive breakfast without needing an antidote. That's real luxury. Their bellies are full, mostly with anxiety and questionable meat. So let's head home. For one, it's a castle full of banners and noise. For the other, it's a crawl space that smells like regret. Either way, bring a blanket. And maybe a torch. Everyone needs a place to sleep. Even in the Middle Ages. Even if you sleep in chainmail. Or with one eye open. Or next to a crossbow named Geraldine. Home, in this era, isn't about coziness. It's not candles and cookies. It's drafty stone and mild fear. It's where you hang your helmet. Or hide your secrets. Let's begin with the knight. He lives in a castle. Or at least, near one. Or inside one, if he's lucky. Or landed. Or adopted by a baron with gout. Castles are massive hunks of stone built mostly to keep out enemies and warmth. They're beautiful in paintings. In reality, they're medieval refrigerators full of politics, livestock, and that one corridor where everyone gets lost and never admits it. The castle is technically home, but emotionally, it's a job you sleep inside. Stone walls, flag-lined halls, tiny arrow-slit windows that let in just enough light to mock you. Your chamber is a rectangular echo chamber of cold air and generational regret. The fireplace exists, yes, but it does nothing. The flames flicker politely. The cold remains. You warm your hands and your hands laugh at you. Your bed? It's a large, imposing rectangle covered in furs that once had fleas and still have dreams about biting. The mattress is stuffed with straw, wool, disappointment, and probably 2 kinds of beetles. There are no springs. There is no support. There is only the constant internal debate about whether a bed should crunch when you lie on it. Privacy? A myth. If you're noble, you might get a curtain. If you're not, you're sharing a chamber with 3 other knights, 2 squires, and at least 1 owl that got in and won't leave. Servants walk in constantly. The door doesn't lock. Sometimes it doesn't close. Once, it didn't exist. The floors are stone, cold stone, hard stone. Your toes have stopped trying to feel anything. Rugs are rare. Warm socks are non-existent. You tiptoe across the chamber like you're being punished for something you haven't remembered yet. The furnishings are sturdy, uncomfortable, and mostly ceremonial. A wooden chest for armor. A stool that pretends to be a chair. A table that leans suspiciously. A candle you relight 6 times a night because it keeps quitting on you like a medieval intern. And the bugs. Oh, the bugs. Castles have more insects than residents. Fleas, lice, spiders, mysterious crawlies that vanish before you can squint. They hide in your bedding, your boots, your breakfast, your dreams. Your squire names them. You develop a kind of tolerance. You shouldn't. Still, the castle is home. Sort of. It has a drawbridge, a moat, a banquet hall that smells like mutton and ambition. It's grand, it's loud, it's cold, but it's yours, until someone sieges it, inherits it, or marries slightly more strategically than you. Now step out of the castle, into the city, or the forest, or the cellar of a tavern no one remembers building. The assassin's home is complicated. He doesn't live anywhere. He lives everywhere, wherever the bed is short-term, wherever the shadows are long. One night it's a loft above a butcher's shop. The next, a barrel in the docks disguised as salted fish. Home isn't a place. It's a strategy. Sometimes it's a brothel, room paid in coin, favour, or silence. Sometimes it's a church, sleeping in the crypt, pretending to be a deeply devout mourner named Brother Allen. Sometimes it's a cave. Sometimes it's the rafters of a nobleman's dining hall who doesn't know he has a ceiling roommate. The assassin's quarters are never comfortable, never permanent, but always chosen. Every space is evaluated, lines of sight, exits, escape routes. A trapdoor is a luxury. A wall that doesn't echo footsteps is priceless. A rat that doesn't bite is a pet. His bed is whatever surface won't betray him. A pile of hay, a stolen cloak, a wooden bench, a rooftop under moonlight, wrapped in shadows and a questionable layer of soot. He doesn't sleep long. He doesn't sleep deep. His body stays curled. His knife stays close. His breath stays shallow. Home, for the assassin, is more about concealment than comfort. He keeps his belongings in pouches, boots, and hollowed-out bricks. There's no chest, no shelf, no bedside table with a candle and a copy of Meditations for Murderers. He owns what he can carry. He trusts nothing. And yet, somehow, it's safer. No one knows where he is. Not really. Not unless he wants them to. His hideouts rotate. His paths double back. He changes names the way nobles change horses, often, awkwardly, and with a certain dramatic flair. "Who lives there?" the tavern keeper asks. "No one," someone replies. But the floorboards creak differently now. Compare this to the night. His home is known. Listed. Tracked. Taxed. It has a banner. A bloodline. A family history etched into the walls, usually with fire damage. If someone wants to find the night, they knock at the gate, or climb the wall, or just send a note that says, "We're coming." For the assassin, no one comes, because no one knows. And that's the point. But both homes have the same flaws. Cold, damp, insects, paranoia. No one in this time period gets cozy. You just get less miserable. And even that's temporary. The night might have a squire to light the fire. The assassin lights his own, then douses it 3 seconds later because the glow might give him away. The knight hangs his sword near the bed. The assassin sleeps with his under the pillow, under his chest, or in the bedpost. depending on whether this week's hideout comes with linen. The knight stares at the ceiling and worries about battles. The assassin stares at the floorboards and listens for footsteps that aren't his. But both men feel it, the slight tension in the spine, the subtle ache behind the eyes, the exhaustion that never leaves. Because home, in medieval Europe, isn't safety. It's a break between threats. And yet, it matters, however temporary, however cursed. The knight still calls it his hall. The assassin still calls it his spot, whether it's guarded by a drawbridge or booby-trapped with chalk dust and rusty nails. It's home. Until morning. Or until someone finds it. You? You have a bed with springs, insulation, curtains, no fleas, no fire risk, no dripping ceiling beam that smells like betrayal and mildew. Your door locks. Your bath isn't in a moat. You can sleep for 8 hours and not once worry about whether that creak outside is a tax collector or a professional killer named Elric the Dagger Enthusiast. So close your eyes. Imagine lying on a straw-stuffed mattress while wind whistles through a crack in the stone and something small scurries under your blanket. Or picture curling up in a dusty cellar where you rigged a tripwire and you're 60% sure the floor fungus is sentient. That's what medieval home means. Now breathe deep. Because tonight, your blanket doesn't scratch. Your room doesn't echo with betrayal. Your ceiling doesn't leak. And no one's hiding under your floorboards. Probably. After a long night of trying not to get frostbite or stabbed in your own bed, it's time to go to work. Whether you're pledging your sword to a cause or accepting payment for a quiet disappearance, the grind never ends. Medieval HR is just a dagger and a prayer. Everyone has to make a living, even in a world where half the population thinks sneezing is a demon trying to escape. Whether you wear a tabard or a tunic full of throwing knives, one truth remains. You wake up, you work, and you try not to die by lunchtime. It's employment, but make it medieval. Let's start with the knight. The knight's job is simple in theory. Serve the king, uphold honour, look shiny, die gloriously. Repeat if reincarnated. He works for glory, for chivalry, for ideals carved into oak and funded by a duke who hasn't touched grass in 3 years. But in practice, the knight works for whoever owns his land, pays his salary, or holds the deeds to his ancestral pig barn. Glory is just a marketing slogan for getting stabbed slowly in full armour. His job description looks noble. It's not. His day starts with drills, meetings, horse poop, and ends with someone screaming, "For the realm!" before falling into a moat. He fights in wars, tournaments, skirmishes, barroom misunderstandings, and the occasional wedding brawl. He's a blunt instrument in a world that loves blunt instruments. There's a chain of command, of course. Knights answer to barons, who answer to dukes, who answer to kings, who answer to the Pope, who answers to no one except God, and occasionally poor judgment. This means the knight spends a lot of time taking orders from people who haven't seen a sword since it was part of a decorative crest. The knight's work life is full of rituals. He swears oaths. He recites creeds. He blesses weapons. He kisses relics. He listens to sermons about honour while polishing a blade he used to carve his name into a bench last week. His moral compass points directly to whatever my lord says, even if his lord is a morally questionable man who once declared war because someone insulted his hat. When he's not fighting, the knight's duties include training squires, patrolling lands, resolving disputes over sheep, and standing very still in a hallway for 7 hours while nobles argue about taxes they've never paid. He's part warrior, part butler, part statue. And yes, there's paperwork, battle records, supply requisitions, oath renewals, letters of grievance about stolen banners. Even knights have scrolls to fill out. The only thing worse than getting shot with an arrow is trying to explain to a monk why your spear inventory is off by 3, and one of them is stuck in a horse. Now shift the lens. Zoom in on the alley behind a spice merchant's stall. That flicker of movement, that's the assassin clocking in. The assassin's job is equally straightforward. Kill who needs killing. Don't get caught. Don't die. Get paid. Run. Bonus points for not leaving a trail of bodies unless that was the request. Unlike the knight, he doesn't work for a flag, or a realm, or an idea bigger than himself. He works for coin, or blackmail, or the occasional very personal reason that involves childhood trauma and someone named Lord Tremaine. His employer? Flexible. Sometimes it's a guild. Sometimes it's a client. Sometimes it's an anonymous scroll tied to a raven with bad attitude and worse penmanship. There's no HR department. There are no benefits. The retirement plan is a grave marked, "Here lies nobody, definitely not Gerald the Knife." Still, there's structure. There's protocol. There are contracts. Assassins aren't chaos. They're spreadsheets with blades. Each job has terms. Target, timing, style, price. Payment up front. Half now, half later. Unless you're working for nobility, in which case you'll be paid in lies, betrayal, or an awkward dual invitation. And yes, even assassins have paperwork, not parchment with seals and gold flourishes, more like coded ledgers, smudged notes, poison recipes scrawled into the margins of anatomy books, and maps with alarming stains labelled, "Do not step here, explodes." Their version of a time card is a blood-stained coin bag and a well-timed exit. An assassin's workday varies. It might involve climbing rooftops at dawn, stalking a target through a market disguised as a garlic vendor, or lying in a barrel full of fish for 6 hours because the Duke's route changed. It's physically demanding, mentally taxing, and smells like fermented eel 30% of the time. He's not always killing. Sometimes he's watching, following, listening, learning that Sir Alric of Tinsford doesn't like turnips and always turns left before lying. That kind of detail matters. Not for gossip, though, let's be honest, assassins know everything. But because information is a weapon, and silence is his training montage. While knights wear armour, assassins wear discretion. One fights in open fields with banners waving. The other moves through kitchens, bathhouses, stables, monasteries. Every room is a battlefield. Every broom closet a fortress. Every spoon a potential weapon. Seriously, don't ask. And then there's the moral compass. Knights pretend to have one. Assassins stopped pretending after the first job. A knight may question his orders, briefly, out loud, before a priest tells him to pray harder. An assassin questions everything except his exit route. Knights kill in the name of justice. Assassins kill because justice hired them quietly and requested plausible deniability. Yet both walk the same roads, same dirt, same guilt, same cold. The knight drinks wine to forget the faces. The assassin doesn't forget, he memorizes, then files them away in a mental drawer marked, "Do not open unless hunted." The knight prays before battle. The assassin prays before poison. Usually that the dosage is correct, because medieval dosages are based on guesses, moon cycles, and general vibes. The knight is praised in ballads. The assassin is erased from records. One is celebrated, the other is survived, and both lie awake at night wondering if this is what they were meant for, or just what they were told they were meant for. You? You work in offices. You fill out forms, complain about meetings, and eat sandwiches without inspecting them for traps. Your job rarely involves ladders, daggers, or the phrase, "poisoned goose liver." You've never climbed a bell tower at midnight, or jousted a man because your lord said his wife looked at you too tenderly. But next time you grumble about emails or printers, or someone stealing your lunch, just remember, at least you weren't paid in old coins, bad directions, and the looming threat of excommunication. Because in medieval Europe, work isn't fulfilling. It's survival with a dress code. Whether you wear steel or shadow, the job will break you eventually. It's just a matter of whether you bleed on the battlefield or slip away through the back door while no one's looking. Either way, your shift isn't over. Someone's calling your name. Time to stand up. or vanish. They've got their orders. They've got their targets. Now it's time to travel. One rides in a royal parade, banners high. The other sneaks out the back door with a hood up and a fake name. Let's hit the road, one hoofbeat at a time. Let's get something clear. Travel in the Middle Ages is not a vacation. There are no roadside inns with hot baths, no scenic detours, no trustworthy maps. There's mud, fear, bandits, and the constant realization that your journey may end in a ditch with your boots missing. No one enjoys travel. They survive it. Badly. Let's begin with the night. When a knight hits the road, the world knows. It's not subtle. It's not efficient. It's a procession, somewhere between a military campaign and an unnecessarily loud wedding. Trumpets, banners, dozens of horses, each one pooping with dramatic timing. Squires scuttling around like nervous crabs, holding lances, shields, and the knight's fourth best helmet in case of formal stabbing situations. Servants lug bedrolls, armor chests, portable altars, and a slightly embarrassed monk. And the knight? He rides at the centre, proud, upright, radiating confidence, constipation, and mild heatstroke under 60 pounds of chainmail. His horse is enormous, armoured, and deeply resentful. You can hear them coming for miles. Birds flee, townspeople hide. Bakers pause mid-need just to mutter, "Not again." It's called progress, not because they move quickly, but because it takes 3 days to go 10 miles. Everything is ceremonial. Everything is heavy. There's a standard bearer, a camp cook, a bard who insists on composing verses in real time, despite being legally tone-deaf. The group pauses every hour to rest the horses and argue about which saint protects travellers from swamp rot. They sleep in tents, big ones, tents that require 4 people to assemble and 12 to fold. Tents with beds inside, because sleeping on the ground is for peasants, criminals, and anyone who values their lower back. They set up camp like a portable fortress, complete with watch rotations, prayer circles, and one guy who always forgets where he buried the latrine pit. Food on the road is rustic, which is medieval for slightly burnt and definitely involving onions. The knight dines with dignity, even when that dignity is a pewter spoon and dried meat that tastes like guilt. He pretends not to notice the smoke flavour comes from the cook accidentally setting the cart on fire again. Now let's shift our focus. Same century, same dirt roads, but no trumpets. That movement in the tree line, that's the assassin. He doesn't ride in a column. He doesn't have a banner. He doesn't even have company, unless you count the voices in his head advising him not to drink that stream water. He travels alone, or with someone he plans to kill, or as someone else entirely. His horse is small, fast, quiet. No armour, no bard, no entourage, just a single pack, a crossbow wrapped in canvas, and a pouch full of questionable herbs for pain, disguise, or bribery, depending on how the trip's going. Every inn is a risk, every traveller a witness. He moves from town to town like a ghost with saddle sores, changing names, accents, and reasons for being wherever he is. Last week, he was Brother Simon on pilgrimage. Yesterday he was a fur trader from the north. Today he's a mute stable boy with a limp and 3 knives hidden in his tunic. There's no parade, no fanfare, just long stretches of silence interrupted by the occasional need to vanish behind a tree, because someone might recognise him from that incident in Bruges. He rides at night, or in fog, or behind someone else's caravan, keeping just close enough to listen and just far enough to not be missed. Every bridge is scouted. Every tavern is approached like it might explode. He's never relaxed, only less tense. Where the knight rides through towns with cheers and mild groans, the assassin slips through unnoticed. If someone remembers him, he failed. If someone offers him stew, he politely declines and mentally notes whether the spoon was laced. His camp? Minimal. A bedroll. A rock for a pillow. A fireless night of listening to wolves argue with the moon. He doesn't carry a tent. He doesn't need one. He sleeps wherever no one else would. Ruins, ditches, the rafters of an abandoned chapel full of bats and broken promises. He eats what he finds: dried bread, cured meat, a suspicious apple. Sometimes he buys food under an alias. Sometimes he steals it. Sometimes he just stares at the forest and wonders if this mushroom is edible or fatal. Often, it's both. And yet, despite the differences in their methods, both knight and assassin share a few core experiences. First, saddle sores. Heroic or secretive, your backside is still medieval. You ride long enough, and your inner thighs become a war zone. The knight's armour rubs like a grudge. The assassin's leather sticks like betrayal. Both men dismount, looking like they lost a bar fight with a donkey. Second, bad weather. Rain ruins banners. Rain ruins cloaks. There is no waterproofing. Only the realization that your dignity is dissolving faster than your parchment maps. Both travellers spend half their journey wet, shivering, and cursing saints with names like Saint Odo of unhelpful timing. Third, danger. For the knight, it's ambushes, uprisings, and the occasional jealous baron with a private army and a vendetta about cows. For the assassin, it's traps, bounty hunters, and getting recognised in the wrong village by the wrong widow. Either way, someone's always trying to kill you, usually with enthusiasm. But here's the main difference. The knight gets songs. He rides into town and someone composes an epic called Sir Gregory and the Glorious Mudslide. Children salute him. Peasants offer turnips. The bard sings of valour, victory, and a very exaggerated dragon slaying. The assassin rides into town and no one notices. That's the goal. No songs, no greetings. Just silence, shadow, and a quiet room in the back where the window opens onto the alley in case things go unplanned. And still, they both travel, because travel is part of the job. The knight travels to be seen. The assassin travels to disappear. The knight seeks battlefields. The assassin avoids them. But both ride forward with the same thought circling in their skulls. Please let me survive this road without dysentery, a crossbow bolt, or someone recognizing my face from a tapestry. You? You travel by car, by plane. You have wheels that don't betray you on hills, roads that aren't filled with ruts, mud, and wandering pigs. You complain about delays, seat cushions, and airline food. But you've never had to forge documents just to sleep in a barn next to a coughing mule. So next time your journey gets bumpy, just remember, at least you're not on horseback, wet, itchy, underfed, and wondering if that innkeeper winked because he's friendly, or because he's planning to rob you in your sleep. Because in medieval Europe, the road is long, the path is dangerous, and hemorrhoids are forever. The road is long, muddy, and riddled with saddle rash. But destination reached, it's time to confront the enemy. One stands in a field with a flag. The other waits in a window with a vial of poison. Let's see how they meet their foes, loudly or lethally. Everyone has enemies. Even in the Middle Ages, especially in the Middle Ages, where social networking is mostly whisper campaigns, and everyone's default emotion is suspicion. Whether you wear a sword on your hip, or a poisoned ring on your pinky, odds are someone out there wants you dead. The only difference is whether they challenge you in public or sneak into your room with a pillow and bad intentions. Let's start with the knight. The knight's enemies are dramatic, formal, loud. They don't just appear, they arrive, sometimes on horseback, sometimes with banners, sometimes yelling your name in 4 syllables like it's a spell. A knight's feud begins with an insult, maybe about honour, or horses, or which uncle technically owns the southern pasture, and ends with someone bleeding artistically in a muddy field. This is a duel, medieval HR policy for conflict resolution. The knight announces himself. His title, his lineage, his coat of arms, his completely unverified claim to have once bested 5 Saracens in a single afternoon using only a spoon. His enemy does the same. They ride toward each other at high speed, crash violently, and then pretend it was all very dignified. If it's war, it's bigger. Whole battalions of armoured egos crashing together under the banners of people with slightly different family trees. You fight, you bleed, you lose a friend named Jeff, and then you sing songs about it later while drinking something that probably used to be wine. Knights don't hide their enemies. They parade them. Battlefields are stage plays. You dress up in metal, march in a line, and hope that your squire didn't forget the dagger you hid in your boot for close encounters. You can see your enemy's face. You can hear them shouting. You both know the rules, even if you plan to break them. And if you die, it's heroic, poetic. Sir William fell honourably beneath a hail of arrows while holding the banner aloft. Not tripped over a rock while adjusting his codpiece and got kicked by a horse. Although, let's be honest, that happened more than anyone admits. Now, assassin time. The assassin's enemies are invisible. Or worse, familiar. The man who hired him might also hire someone else to remove him later for being too effective. The woman he helped vanish a corrupt bishop might now be sending letters asking, just one more favour. The guild that trained him? Might be the very thing he's running from. The knight's enemy brings a sword. The assassin's enemy brings a smile and a vial of poison labelled perfume. There are no duels, no declarations, no noble causes. If someone wants an assassin dead, they don't send a challenge. They send someone quieter and hungrier, maybe with a grudge, maybe with a blade carved from bone. Assassins don't do battlefield drama. Their war zone is bedrooms, bathhouses, confessional booths. Their fights last seconds, or hours, or never happen at all because the target never wakes up. If a knight dies in a blaze of steel and trumpets, an assassin dies face down in soup at a tavern in Lyon, with no one realizing for 3 hours. The enemies come from every direction, sometimes from within. There are no allies, only people not currently aiming for your throat. One wrong name, one misspoken phrase, one alley taken too confidently. That's all it takes. When knights hunt their enemies, it's sanctioned, announced. Sir Baldwin rides north to claim justice. There's a banner. There's fanfare. There's a squire crying because he forgot the comb again. When assassins hunt, it's different. They're not chasing glory. They're chasing whispers, paper trails, poison trails, sometimes revenge. Their enemy might be a man they've never seen. A woman whose ring bears the same symbol as the one carved into their former mentor's spine. A name whispered by a dying mark. And here's the sick twist. Knights believe in justice. Assassins believe in cycles. A knight's revenge is loud. You killed my brother. Meet me at dawn. An assassin's revenge is quieter. You killed my brother, so now I own your bank account, your identity, and your favourite innkeeper. Sleep well. The knight dies for honour. The assassin lives for completion. The battlefield favours none of them, but the assassin avoids the field altogether. Still, both have enemies that teach them something, that in this world, peace is rented, not owned, that alliances are currency, and that no matter how strong your armour or how silent your boots, someone is always watching and waiting. The knight trains to face his enemy, sword to sword, steel against steel. He's been hit before. He knows the sound of bone cracking under a mace. His reflexes are built on 10,000 drills and one spectacularly painful mistake involving a hay bale and an overly ambitious squire named Tobbert. The assassin trains to avoid theirs. They strike first, or not at all. They know the quickest way out of every room. They know how to fake a limp, a death, or a confession. Their reflexes are built on paranoia, poison resistance, and the ability to kill someone using only the environment and a well-timed sneeze. The knight's enemies fear him in combat. The assassin's enemies don't even know they're on the list. And if you're wondering which job is more dangerous, the knight's enemy might stab him. The assassin's enemy might be themselves 5 years from now, after choosing the wrong target and realizing too late that they were just a pawn in someone else's bloody chess game. You have enemies, sure. Maybe someone at work who keeps microwaving fish. Maybe your ex who still hasn't returned your socks. But you don't have to sleep with your back to a wall and your dagger under the pillow. You don't walk into banquets wondering if the goose was laced with belladonna. You don't fear the man behind the curtain or the woman behind the wine. So next time you hold a grudge or send a spicy email, just be glad your medieval alter ego isn't being followed across 3 kingdoms by someone named Whisper, who carries a spoon that's also a weapon. Because in the Middle Ages, enemies aren't just an inconvenience. They're a career hazard. They're your neighbour, your guildmate, your brother. And they don't argue. They act. After the clash, or the silent end, it's time to tend the wounds. Physical, emotional, or poison-induced. Because whether it's a battlefield gash or a suspicious rash from kissing the wrong noble, medieval healthcare does not discriminate. Pain awaits. You don't get health insurance in medieval Europe. What you get is hope, superstition, and a lot of prayers to saints with names like Saint Phlegm of persistent infections. Whether you're bleeding out in a field or coughing yourself into a new identity, the Middle Ages will absolutely test how loud you can scream, or how quietly you can die. Let's begin with the knight. Knights are built for injury. They wear armour heavier than their emotional repression and spend most of their adult life getting stabbed for a cause they only vaguely remember supporting. Their job is fight. Their reward is scars. Their legacy is a gravestone that reads, "Died with honour," and tetanus. Injuries are expected, celebrated even. A good gash on the thigh? That's prestige. A broken rib from a jousting lance? That's Tuesday. Losing a finger in battle? Now you're interesting at dinner parties. Oh, this? Lost it defending a turnip cart outside Caen. You should have seen the other guy. He got mild bruising. But battlefield wounds aren't clean. They're messy. Rusty blades, filthy mud, and a complete lack of anything resembling antiseptic mean every scratch is a gamble. You don't know if you're healing or rotting. The pus tells you in a few days. The knight's first line of medical care? The squire. A teenage boy who once saw a monk bandage a sheep. He wraps your wound in old linen, mutters a prayer, and hopes you don't bleed out before the feast. Then you go see the castle physician, who diagnoses you based on the colour of your urine and the alignment of Mars. Treatment involves wine, leeches, or if you're lucky, boiling water applied directly to the problem until it stops being a problem. Surgery is performed on tables that double as meat preparation surfaces, and anaesthesia, that's called biting leather and screaming your lineage into the rafters. Knights die big. They die loud. They die with their boots on, usually because there's no time to take them off before someone yells "Archers!" and everything catches fire. Now let's check in with our assassin. You think it's easier? Quieter, sure. Cleaner? Not even slightly. Because while the knight fights obvious battles, the assassin lives in a constant medical panic spiral. Their world is blades laced with mystery fluid, cakes filled with poison, rings that double as hypodermic death traps. The assassin's greatest injury isn't a sword through the chest. It's poison on the bread, a scratch on the shoulder that starts to tingle, or waking up with blurred vision, and the sudden realization that last night's wine tasted slightly of almonds. And the worst part? You never know what hit you. Was it the cheese? The candle wax? The air? You can't scream because your throat's closing. You can't call for help because the only person nearby is already dead. You just lie there, twitching, silently accusing the fig that looked a little too plump. Assassins live in a state of permanent mild poisoning. They train for it. Microdoses, controlled exposure, You build resistance one horrifying meal at a time, but there's always something new. A venom from a spider found only in northern swamps, a powder that causes nosebleeds and existential dread, a mist that makes your skin feel like betrayal. And when it's not poison, it's wounds. Hidden wounds. Quiet ones. A dagger to the ribs that you bandage alone, gritting your teeth and whispering affirmations like, "Pain is just weakness evacuating the body," even though it might also be your spleen. Assassins don't have squires. They have mirrors, sewing needles, and a deep tolerance for suffering. They stitch themselves shut. They cauterize with stolen candles. They survive on boiled moss and paranoia. Their doctors are apothecaries, thieves, and that one herbalist who talks to frogs and accepts payment in secrets. Everyone in this profession has at least one permanent limp, a recurring cough, or a mysterious rash they named after a failed mission. One assassin's memoir included a section titled "Injuries I Remember Fondly," followed by 32 pages of bullet points and a sketch of their least favourite arrowhead. But here's the twist. The assassin can't show pain. Pain is vulnerability. Pain is exposure. If you limp, someone notices. If you wince, someone remembers. And if you collapse, you're no longer the hunter. You're just another corpse for someone else's resume. Knights collapse in public and are praised for bravery. Assassins collapse in private and are never seen again. Still, no matter who you are, healing sucks. Knights have the advantage of resources. Castle infirmaries. Monks with vague knowledge of herbs and the confidence of a drunk bard. If you're rich, you get honey, poultices, even trepanning with a cleanish drill. If you're poor, you get mud and a pat on the head. Assassins have the advantage of urgency. They don't wait. They can't. They drink the tincture, swallow the root, press the burning iron against the wound while biting on a sock, and move on. You get one chance. You miss the infection window, and now your arm is a liability. Better to cut it off than to let it cost you your face. And let's not forget leeches, the ultimate medieval equalizer. Everyone gets leeches. Knights get them for bloodletting, humour balancing, or post-battle soul alignment. Assassins get them to suck out toxins, drain swelling, or because someone said, "This might help probably." No one likes it. Everyone pretends it's normal. Somewhere, a monk is writing a love poem about the healing powers of slugs. Mental health? Don't even try. Knights are told to pray harder and ride more horses. Assassins are told nothing, because admitting you're scared in this line of work is the same as writing your own obituary on the back of a bar napkin. Both lose sleep. Both get fever dreams. Both wake up in the middle of the night covered in sweat, blood, or regret. The knight rolls over and calls for a priest. The assassin reaches for the blade under the pillow and listens until the silence feels safe again. And when it all goes wrong, when the wounds are too deep or the poison works too fast, there is no mercy. The knight dies with honour, surrounded by squires and sobbing clergy. Trumpets, psalms, a polished tomb with Latin carved too elaborately for what was essentially a giant stab wound to the lung. The assassin dies face down in a river, unnamed, unclaimed, and unrecorded. Maybe someone remembers them as a whisper. Maybe someone builds a statue and gives it the wrong face. But most likely, they disappear. One more shadow lost to the bigger darkness. And you? You get paper cuts and complain. You get a sore throat and cancel plans. You take a vitamin and sleep for 12 hours straight in a bed that isn't full of straw, rats, or unspoken trauma. So the next time you stub your toe or feel a cold coming on, just remember, in the Middle Ages, every health hazard came with leeches, a prayer, and a 30% chance of immediate death. And no one offered you a lollipop afterward. Bleeding, mostly, stopped. Bones, mostly, reset. Our knight and assassin limp back into the world. But what do people say about them? One gets songs, the other gets rumours. Let's explore reputation. Earned, exaggerated, or entirely fabricated. Let's say you die. Not now, relax, but eventually. And when you do, what gets left behind? A name? A statue? A whispered warning in a back alley? Or nothing at all but a bloodstain and a half-eaten fig? In medieval Europe, your reputation is everything. It defines your life, your work, and your funeral budget. And for knights and assassins, reputation isn't just a side effect. It's the whole point. One seeks fame, the other seeks the absence of a name entirely. Let's compare. First, the knight. Knights are built on reputation, literally. Their job is 80% public relations, 10% battlefield choreography, and 10% real violence if someone screws up the pageantry. Everything they do is observed, noted, and eventually sung about by a bard with a lute and a dangerously flexible definition of truth. A knight's reputation is forged in tournaments, wars, and dramatic declarations involving phrases like, "in defense of honor," and "by the blood of my ancestors." Every action is a chance to become a legend. Every duel, every charge, every banner hoisted above a burning village is one step closer to having someone carve your face into a stained glass window that doesn't remotely look like you. Their scrolls tell of bravery. Their statues show perfect jawlines. Their songs always rhyme. Even if you tripped on your own lance and broke your collarbone trying to mount a horse backwards, some overzealous bard will twist it into a tale of sacrifice and strategy. Reputation for a knight is armor you wear before the real armor. If you're known as a hero, people hesitate. They bow. They buy your drinks. They name babies after you. Your squire writes poetry about your sideburns. And when you die, ideally, heroically, you're remembered forever. Or at least until your castle is burned down and the scribe forgets how vowels work. But it's not all roses and respect. Reputation also means expectation. Once you're Sir Edric the Brave, you can't exactly run away from a bar fight, or admit you're scared of geese, or confess that your last battle was mostly screaming and a pulled hamstring. You live inside a myth, and myths don't get bathroom breaks. Your flaws become taboos. Your mistakes are rewritten or buried with the cook who witnessed them. And if you lose your reputation, you might as well lose your head. A knight without honor is just a guy in metal pajamas who yells a lot. Now flip the coin. The assassin's reputation is the opposite of fame. It's fear. They're not sung about. They're not carved into chapel walls. They don't get monikers like the Just or the Merciful. They get names like the Shade, Whisper, or That Thing in the Rafters. Assassins don't want to be known. Not directly. Their presence lingers in missing persons, closed shutters, and rumours that someone vanished after insulting a nun in the wrong town. You'll never meet the person an assassin killed. You'll just hear about it from a man who swears his cousin saw something move in the dark 3 years ago. Their greatest asset? Anonymity. Their second greatest? That no one's entirely sure they exist. They're shadows in stories told by firelight. If you lie, the ghost blade will take your tongue. If you cheat at dice, the red cloak will visit you in your sleep. If you tell anyone about the Duke's illegitimate third son, don't bother making plans for the weekend. Assassin reputation is weaponized invisibility. They're legends without detail. Everyone's afraid of them, but no one knows who they are, or if they're even real. That's the point. If people see your face, the game's over. If someone can name you, they can find you. And if they can find you, well, enjoy the poisoned meat pie from your guild's retirement committee. Their reward is silence. They don't get applause. They get survival. They don't get songs. They get suspicious glances. They don't get statues. They get bounties. High ones. The kind of bounties that make even monks consider a career change. But here's the catch. Reputation still matters. Because if you're too invisible, clients won't hire you. If your name never travels, neither does your paycheck. So assassins walk a tightrope. Be known just enough to be useful. Be feared just enough to keep your enemies at bay. Be real enough to haunt people's dreams, but fake enough to vanish when someone starts drawing sketches. And while knights leave behind stained glass, assassins leave behind warnings. Messages in blood, a dagger in a wall with a black feather tied to it, a rumour that the baker's son was overheard saying something treasonous, and now no one's seen him since the last full moon. So which is better? To be remembered as a hero, or to live long enough to forget who you even were? Knights get legacy. They get legacy even when they don't deserve it. You can be a clumsy, loud-mouthed brute with a taste for mead and absolutely no sense of strategy, and still have a statue erected in your honour because you looked cool while yelling. History is written by the victorious and heavily edited by those who outlived them. Assassins get deniability. They vanish into folklore. They become the thing people blame when things go wrong. Must have been an assassin. Probably poison. Didn't he say something about tax evasion? The knight's death earns tears and tribute. The assassin's death earns silence and shuffled feet. Maybe a note burned in a tavern fireplace. Maybe not even that. But both, live and die with the same question whispering in the back of their minds. Was it worth it? Because glory fades, fear fades, statues crumble, whispers die out. And somewhere, someone forgets your name. You. You'll be remembered if you go viral, if someone tags you in enough stories, if a sandwich is named after you. But your odds of being immortalized in stained glass are slim, and your odds of being mythologized in blood-stained urban legend are lower unless you've made some very specific life choices involving crossbows and forged documents. So appreciate this, that in a time where reputation meant everything, both the knight and the assassin were desperately performing for futures they might never live to see. The knight, for songs, the assassin, for silence. And in the end, both just wanted to matter. To live long enough for someone to say, he was something. Whether that something was terrifying or noble didn't always matter. Not when death was watching. Not when memory was fleeting. Not when history had a habit of rewriting itself faster than a drunk monk at a royal wedding. So who wins? Depends who's still alive at the end. But behind every legend, there's a personal life. Or at least, an attempt at one. Because even in the Middle Ages, love finds a way. Through duty, deceit, or shared trauma, and a conveniently empty alleyway. Let's talk about romance, medieval style. Let's talk about love. Not the kind you find in sonnets or on tapestries, where two people stare at each other like they're about to invent monogamy. No, this is medieval love. The scratchy, strategic, suspicious kind. Love in a time when deodorant didn't exist, and neither did emotional honesty. We'll start once again with the knight. Knights don't fall in love. They climb into it, like a siege tower, with armour on, a marriage contract in one hand, and the name of their bride written phonetically in Latin on the other. Love, for a knight, is business. Politics. Expansion. It's land acquisition with kissing. Marriages are arranged, always, by fathers, uncles, feudal lords, or that one monk with too many scrolls and not enough hobbies. The bride might be 14, the groom might be 47. The shared interests? Not being poor and producing sons who can swing a sword without immediately dying. Courtship, if it happens at all, consists of glances across the mead table, awkward compliments about embroidery, and maybe one heavily supervised stroll through the garden with 5 nuns chaperoning and a goat in tow. If that stroll doesn't end in engagement, it ends in rumours, and then another engagement to someone less troublesome. Love letters? Occasionally, but usually written by someone else. A squire with decent penmanship. The knight dictates, "Dearest lady, thy hair is like grain." The squire fixes it to, "Thy tresses, golden as harvest's grace." do enslave my heart. The knight signs it, spills some ale on it, and calls it chivalry. Once married, romance dies faster than the family pig during Lent. Affection is permitted in public, briefly. A nod, a gloved hand touch. Anything more emotional than that gets labelled French, and quietly punished by cold silence and a suspiciously passive-aggressive dinner seating arrangement. As for the wedding night, it's not exactly candlelit seduction. You're both exhausted. You've been wearing ceremonial garments for 12 hours. Half the guests are still drunk and someone's singing loudly outside the door. The marriage must be consummated. That's the law. Sometimes there's even a witness, a literal person in the room pretending to look at the wall while nervously coughing and updating the family's legitimacy chart. Sex isn't for love, it's for lineage. You make heirs, not memories. And if your knightly passions wander, that's fine, provided they wander toward a widow, a chambermaid, or someone too low-ranking to complain. Romance is optional. Duty is mandatory. You don't woo. You reproduce. And yet, sometimes, there's a spark, a flicker, a moment of shared laughter over bad stew, or a quiet glance during Mass. Love sneaks in like a rat under the door. It's not passionate, it's not poetic, but it's there, somewhere between the gout and the grief. Now let's look at the assassin. If knights marry for land, assassins don't marry at all. Not unless it's a cover identity, and even then, they forget the anniversary because they're too busy poisoning someone during dinner. Love, for an assassin, is either a liability or a trap. It's something you weaponize or something you run from. Because opening your heart also opens your throat. And they know it. You can't afford romance. Not when your entire identity is a lie and your job involves disappearing for days without notice and returning with blood on your sleeves and a story about how the caravan broke down. Again, relationships are complicated when you can't use your real name. When your job involves secrets, daggers, and faking your own death every third Tuesday. You can't exactly bring someone home to your mouldy rooftop hideout and say, "Ignore the trapdoor under the bed." That's for enemies. Or exes. So most assassins don't date. They flirt, sure, when it's useful. They seduce, occasionally, if the mission calls for it. But genuine love, that's rare. Risky, often lethal. If a knight's biggest heartbreak is a loveless marriage, the assassin's is accidentally catching feelings for someone they were sent to kill. Because yes, it happens. The classic trope, fall for the target. Or worse, fall for the other assassin, also pretending to be a baker. You think they're normal. They think you're normal. And then one night you both reach for the same dagger under the pillow and stare at each other like, wait, you too? Some try to make it work. Code words, safe houses, mutual threats. But most burn out. Too much danger. Too little trust. And the constant fear that "I love you" might actually mean check your wine. Sex is a transaction. Affection is suspicious. Vulnerability is a death sentence. And yet, somewhere, in the back of a brothel, or under the flickering glow of a tavern candle, something real might happen. A soft touch. A shared laugh. A moment where the assassin forgets their alias and just is. It's fragile, fleeting, and possibly fatal. But it's something. So who has it worse? The knight marries for glory and ends up with gout and passive aggression. The assassin doesn't marry at all, but falls in love with ghosts. One gets dinner banquets with no conversation. The other eats alone and imagines a future they're never allowed to have. Knights get poetry. Assassins get longing. Knights get cold beds and political alliances. Assassins get hot glances and very poor impulse control. But here's the twist. Both are alone. One in public, the other in secret. One surrounded by nobility and suffocated by ceremony. the other buried in shadows and suffocated by truth. And love, in both cases, becomes less about hearts and more about survival. Do they make you stronger? Do they keep your secrets? Will they hold your hand, or hide the blade behind your back? Modern romance novels would weep. But hey, it's the Middle Ages. You don't swipe right. You swindle a dowry, or you seduce a spy and pray you both make it through the week. So next time you complain about a bad date, remember, at least no one was pretending to be a wool merchant while plotting your execution. Probably. Love is fleeting. But rules? Rules are forever. Whether it's divine law, moral code, or a hit list with holy water stains, both knight and assassin answer to something bigger than themselves. Let's meet the real authority: faith, fear, and fire. In the Middle Ages, your biggest problem isn't the sword, the poison, or the lice in your underwear. It's sin. Or rather, the constant suspicion that you've already committed 100 of them by breakfast. And God is absolutely keeping score. Knights and assassins both answer to codes, one carved into scrolls and sermons, the other etched into contracts, knives, and whispered instructions passed under flickering torchlight. One kneels before the altar, the other climbs the rafters above it. But both, deeply, inescapably religious. Because when everything around you is filthy, brutal, and possibly on fire, you turn to the divine, or at least pretend to. Let's start with the knight. Knights are married to two things: land and the church, and sometimes a person, but that's usually third on the priority list. Their entire job, besides yelling during battles and posing dramatically in doorways, is to be chivalrous. A concept made up by people who had never once been in a real fight, but loved the idea of honor as long as someone else bled for it. The chivalric code says things like, protect the innocent, serve your lord, defend the church, respect women, vaguely, and don't be a jerk unless the person's foreign, heretical, or owes you pigs. It's basically the medieval version of a company mission statement. Idealistic, poorly followed, and wildly open to interpretation. Knights attend Mass regularly, loudly, publicly, often while hungover. It's not optional, it's part of the whole medieval brand package. You kneel on stone floors that haven't been cleaned since St. Hukar's day, whisper prayers in a Latin you absolutely do not understand, and try not to audibly fart during the incense waving, because nothing says pious warrior like breaking wind in front of a bishop while pretending to contemplate the crucifixion. Then you rise, dramatically cross yourself like you're accepting an award, and march off to commit light to moderate violence in the name of something ambiguously righteous. Sometimes it's justice. Sometimes it's taxes. Sometimes it's because someone made a joke about your horse looking common. The reasons don't matter. What matters is that God is watching. And God loves a knight in full battle regalia, galloping into conflict while shouting, Deus vult! God wills it, which in practical terms translates to, this probably wasn't a great idea, but I'm too far in now, and divine approval makes excellent armour. To a knight, God isn't just a spiritual figure, he's a cosmic war sponsor, a heavenly backer for all things chivalrous, stabby, and occasionally regrettable. Need to raid a village? Divine mission. Need to duel your cousin because he insulted your helmet plume? Trial by combat. Need to storm a castle for land that technically already has an owner? Holy reclamation. God's will, conveniently, tends to align with your own ambitions, especially when gold, titles, or vengeance are involved. But religion isn't just battlefield cosplay. It's everywhere. It's baked into every crevice of knightly existence, like mould into a castle wall. Before jousts? Blessings from a monk who definitely saw you in the tavern last night. Before meals? Grace, muttered through mouthfuls of bread and the occasional sideways glare across the banquet table. Before sleep? Hail Marys, whispered from a featherless mattress, while wondering if that creaking floorboard is a structural issue or the ghost of the guy you definitely didn't mean to run through during that training accident. And confession? Oh, knights adore confession. It's their medieval reset button, their all-you-can-sin buffet pass. You gallop into town after a month of raiding, still wearing the same shirt you committed 4 war crimes in, smelling like spoiled ale and unwashed ambition. You kneel in a booth that hasn't been aired out since Lent, whisper all your sins, from murder and gluttony to the time you flirted with your steward's wife while only technically drunk, and the priest sighs, blesses you, assigns 3 Our Fathers, and poof. Clean slate. You emerge reborn, holy, momentarily absolved. Just in time to rejoin your comrades, mount your destrier, and immediately sin again before lunch, because that's the rhythm. Sin, confess, repeat. It's less about transformation and more about maintenance. Like spiritual oil changes, keep the soul running, even if the brakes have long since given out. God, for the night, is armor you can't see. A get-out-of-jail-free card for anything, as long as it's followed by the right prayer and a sufficiently remorseful tone. It's not hypocrisy, it's tradition. Besides, what's a little sin when you've got a relic on your sword hilt and a bishop who owes you money? Now let's flip to the assassin. No sermons, no scrolls, no stained glass saints judging your posture. Just the code. And the code is clear. Finish the job. Leave no trace. Trust no one. Never eat figs from strangers. Assassins don't operate in churches. They hide in them. They don't follow holy doctrine. They exploit it. Priests don't know their names. Monks pretend they've never seen them. The confessional booth? That's a place to kill, not confess. But that doesn't mean they're godless. Far from it. Many assassins believe deeply in something, just not the usual heaven-hell paradigm. Their faith is personal, old, twisted, a quiet blend of superstition, stolen prayers, and the kind of beliefs whispered into children's ears by midwives who saw too much. Some worship shadows, some worship silence. Some believe in balance. Every life taken must be weighed somehow, somewhere. Some don't believe at all, because belief gets you killed, or worse, gives you hope. Still, there are rituals. Every contract is a kind of prayer, every kill a sacrament. The blade is anointed in oil, the disguise chosen with intention, the coin paid with a silent vow. This death is owed. And if the job fails, that's not just failure, it's spiritual debt, and the code is clear. Debts must be paid, even if the price is your own life. Assassins don't go to confession. They leave messages, scratched symbols on walls, a trinket at the feet of a statue, a letter burned before the ink dries. Not absolution, just record-keeping. And yet, deep down, many of them wonder, is there a God for us? Does heaven accept people who never had the luxury of mercy? Is there a saint for those who sin so others might live? Is redemption possible if your only prayer is a blade beneath a pillow? No one knows. But both the knight and the assassin walk the world aware that someone, something, is watching. The knight calls it divine judgment. The assassin calls it surveillance. Either way, it's oppressive. Both are haunted. The knight by guilt, the assassin by ghosts. Both kneel, one in cathedrals, the other on rooftops. Both whisper names. Both believe, in their own way, that the afterlife has a seating chart, and neither of them is in the noble section. So who has it worse? The knight sins publicly, then begs for grace. The assassin sins silently, knowing grace is never coming. One fights to defend sacred texts. The other rewrites the margins in blood. The knight hopes God loves him. The assassin just hopes God's not paying attention. And yet, somehow, they meet at the same end. Dirt, silence. A cross over the grave if you're lucky. a shallow ditch if you're not. And maybe, just maybe, a final breath that sounds like a prayer, whether you mean it or not. So light a candle, or snuff one out. Confess, if you must, or keep your secrets buried deep. Because in the Middle Ages, whether you wore a cross or a code, salvation wasn't promised. Only the chance to die believing you might still deserve it. And when all the prayers, codes, and contracts run out, there's only one destination left: death. For one, a ceremony. For the other, a shallow ditch. Let's take a closer look at the final chapter. Honourably fallen or quietly disappeared. If there's one thing everyone in medieval Europe can agree on, it's this: death is coming. Loud, quiet, sudden, theatrical, petty. It doesn't matter how sharp your sword or how silent your step. Eventually, you end up face down in the mud, or the moat, or halfway inside a casket that wasn't actually meant for you. Knights and assassins both die professionally. One does it with a final cry of valour and a sword through the stomach. The other does it choking on fish that shouldn't have smelled like almonds. But they both go out in style, whether that style is heroic ballad or suspicious puddle. Let's begin with the knight. A knight dies on the battlefield, ideally. That's the dream. Sword in hand, banner overhead, surrounded by chaos and honour, and at least one minstrel furiously taking notes for the song later. The death itself? Ugly. Blood. Screaming. Possibly being trampled by your own horse, who panicked and decided valour wasn't in its job description. But the story? The story is beautiful. You fell defending your liege. You stood your ground. You charged nobly into the breach. No one mentions the part where your armour buckled, your bladder gave out, and your final words were, "Wait, where's my..." followed by a loud squelch. That's edited out in post-production. And after? You get buried like royalty, or at least like someone who didn't spend his last moments being gnawed on by rats. There's a ceremony, a mass. People wear their second nicest cloaks. Your sword is laid on your chest, even though it technically belongs to your lord, and should be returned by Thursday. You're interred in the chapel, beneath stained glass, and the vague scent of incense and mildew. A stone slab bears your name, plus a few flattering lies. Sir Reynold the Just, who was, in fact, a terrible gambler, and once accidentally jousted a priest. But no one remembers that. You're a symbol now. Your tomb becomes a place where children whisper and throw pebbles and wonder if your ghost still knows how to use a lance. You made it. You died well. Unless, of course, you didn't. Because not all knights die in battle. Some die of gout, or old wounds, or an accident involving too much mead and a staircase. And then the funeral is a bit more awkward. There's less drama, more disappointment. Fewer songs. No one wants to sing about Sir Gilbert, who choked on a quail bone at a feast. Still, even the most embarrassingly unglamorous knight gets a proper burial. It's in the code. If you wore a tabard, you get a tombstone. Even if your biggest contribution to the realm was falling asleep during every council meeting, and once mistaking a peasant uprising for a parade. Now let's slide into the other end of the crypt. The assassin. Assassins don't get tombstones. They get ditches, or alleyways, or if they're particularly unlucky, decorative fountains. Their deaths are quiet, unannounced, and usually preceded by a moment of suspicion. Did the wine taste strange? Was that merchant's hand too close to your belt? Why is it suddenly hard to breathe? There's no battle cry, just a thud, a gasp, a faint, "Oh no," followed by absolute silence, and possibly a pigeon watching from a windowsill with morbid curiosity. If an assassin dies well, no one notices. If they die badly, someone writes a report about it and then burns the report. Their name gets scratched off a ledger. Their safe house gets cleared. Their belongings are divided among people who know better than to ask why there's a dagger sewn into the mattress. No one sings. No one lights a candle. Maybe someone nods. Maybe someone pours a drink. But probably not. They vanish. Literally and legally. Some assassins try to prepare. They make fake graves, hidden compartments. One wrote his own obituary in advance. Local fishmonger dies peacefully after a life of absolutely no suspicious behaviour. It was printed. No one questioned it. The fish was terrible, but the alibi was airtight. And yet, even in death, assassins leave a mark. Not a monument, not a statue, but a rumour. A whisper. A chill that runs down someone's spine when they walk past a certain tavern corner. Didn't someone die there? No, he just disappeared. Exactly. But not every death is clean. Sometimes the assassin is betrayed, killed by their own guild, poisoned by a lover, hunted by someone they failed to kill 5 years ago and forgot about because they were disguised as a goat at the time. Those deaths are messy, not just in blood, but in legacy. The code says you don't leave bodies, but sometimes the code gets rewritten by the person standing over you. And still, there's a strange sort of honour. Assassins know they won't be remembered. That's the point. But in their final breath, there's often acceptance. No plea, no tears, just a look. Sharp, sad, and very tired. Because dying quietly doesn't mean dying insignificantly. It just means your obituary is carved into silence, not stone. So who dies better? The knight gets ceremony. Trumpets, Latin, occasionally a stained glass window where he looks 15 pounds lighter and considerably more heroic than in life. The assassin gets nothing. No name, no prayer, no closure. But here's the twist. They both rot the same. Same worms, same damp soil, same eventual discovery by bored archaeologists holding up a skull and saying, "Wow, this guy really should have seen a doctor." All that armour, all those contracts, gone. Legacy, like skin, peels away. What's left? A femur, maybe a story, maybe a warning. Sir Cedric the Bold, who died protecting the bridge. Or the silent figure no one knew until they stopped showing up, and no one asked why. One death remembered, the other erased. But both lived hard. Both carried secrets. Both knew, eventually, they'd end up here. In dirt, beneath boots, beneath history. And maybe, just maybe, both hoped for something more. A whisper of peace. A second of grace. A grave that didn't smell like fear. So here's to them. The noble, the nameless. The knight and the assassin. One buried beneath stained glass. The other buried beneath lies. But both gone. And maybe, just maybe, free. And now they're gone. Or at least, not answering calls. But who really had it worse? The knight with the statue? Or the assassin with the secrets? Let's lay it all out. Steel versus silence. Myth versus shadow. Misery versus also misery. So after everything, after the sword drills, the silent kills, the roasted boars, the rat stew, the chainmail wedgies, the poison-soaked gloves, the awkward prayer sessions, the unflattering deaths, you may find yourself wondering, who really had it worse? Was it the knight, caked in duty and rust, dragging his honour through blood and bureaucracy? Or was it the assassin, masked by necessity, breathing guilt into his third stolen identity before breakfast? Let's settle it. Fairly, brutally, pettily. Just like medieval life itself. Start with the knight. From the outside it all looks glorious. Shining armour. Banners flapping in heroic wind. People singing your name in ballads you didn't commission, but absolutely encourage. You're important, recognized, a walking icon of nobility and chivalry and poorly thought out battlefield tactics. But inside the helmet, sweaty, cramped, loud. You're a pawn, an expensive one, sure, but a pawn all the same. You follow orders barked by someone with a family crest and half a working brain. You fight battles you don't understand, for lords who barely remember your name, against people who look just like you, except their tabards are red instead of blue. Your body is broken before 30. Your back hurts from armor. Your legs are bruised from tournaments. You sleep on damp stone in castles designed for drafty intimidation, not lumbar support. You eat better than a peasant, but worse than your dog, and you spend at least 20% of your adult life constipated from too much salted venison. You can't relax. You can't cry. You can't lose. Because knights don't have feelings. They have legacies. And if you so much as trip at a feast, a bard will turn it into an epic poem that rhymes Sir Geoffrey with fell off a tree. Now consider the assassin. There's no glory here, no banners, no songs. You move in silence, by necessity and by design. No one knows your name, and if they do, they're not around long enough to repeat it. You live in corners, crawl spaces, cities you can't call home, identities you can't keep, faces you stop recognizing in reflective puddles. You don't work for honor. You work for coin, or blackmail, or vengeance. You kill men with titles, or lovers with secrets, or witnesses who just happen to turn around too quickly, and every time you tell yourself it's justified, that it's balance, that someone had to do it. But even ghosts get tired. You don't sleep well. You flinch at footsteps. You smell blood even when there isn't any. You run from both the law and the people who pay you, because one mistake means you're the next contract. Your regrets? Long list. Your safety net? Doesn't exist. You sharpen blades in the dark and sometimes stare too long at them, wondering if maybe today's the day you don't duck in time. So again, who had it worse? Let's tally it up. Physical suffering? Knight. Armor chafes. Swords cut. Jousting is just organized trauma in front of an audience. Assassins get hurt, sure, but at least they wear flexible clothes and know how to fall without snapping a femur. Mental suffering. Assassin. The knight worries about honor. The assassin worries about survival. The knight fears shame. The assassin fears being flayed alive in an alley by someone with matching scars and a grudge. One dies for a crown. The other dies for a name that isn't even theirs anymore. Freedom? Technically, the assassin. No chain of command. No feasts. No rules. But also, no trust. No rest. No normal. Knights live in cages. Assassins live in shadows. One's decorated, the other's disposable. Social status? Knight wins by a landslide. You're praised, painted, given land, maybe. Given terrible poetry, definitely. Assassins, on the other hand, have that guy who smelled like onions and vanished as their entire public legacy. Love life? They both lose. The knight's married off for political alliances and gets a side dish of duty, pressure, and romantic disinterest. The assassin can't get close to anyone without wondering if their partner is a spy, a mark, or just the next reason to run. Sex? Sure. Love? Not safely. Sleep quality? Do you even need to ask? So here's the truth. It's not a competition. It's a dual tragedy with different wardrobes. Knights are theatre. Assassins are math. Knights live loud and die louder. Assassins die quiet, and sometimes don't live at all. Knights are remembered in stained glass. Assassins are erased from ledgers, but both break. Both bleed. Both end up face down in dirt, no matter how many titles or tools they carried. They have nightmares, both of them. One dreams of the boy he couldn't save. The other dreams of the boy he had to kill. One sees faces in the firelight. The other sees names he's tried to forget etched on the inside of his eyelids. And yet, both dream. That maybe, Someday, there'll be more than this. But then there's you. You. Right now. Sitting in clean pyjamas. Belly full of modern food that doesn't include turnip paste or suspicious pigeon. You, who brushed your teeth with mint and fluoride this morning. You, with running water and a mattress that doesn't have straw, lice, or your cousin's foot in it. You win. You who can say, "I don't want to fight today," without being executed for cowardice. You, who can Google how to fake your death without being accused of heresy. You, who can love who you want, sleep when you want, and die in a hospital bed surrounded by beeping machines and hygienic people in scrubs. You are the final victor of this grim little game. You are the luxury outcome of centuries of pain. You are what every knight and assassin could never be. Safe, free, unarmored. So tonight, as you pull the covers up and fall asleep without fear of poison, plague, or political marriage, take a moment to thank them. The knight in rusted steel, who died trying to protect a king who barely noticed. The assassin in shadows who made sure no one else had to kill that night. 2 lives, 2 fates. Both cruel, both brave, neither easy. And neither, let's be clear, romantic. So next time you think, "I wish I could live in medieval times," remember, they wouldn't wish that on you. You'd last 5 minutes. 2, if it's raining. And there you have it. Knights in shining armour, assassins in threadbare cloaks. One dies with a sword in his gut and a hymn in his ears. The other vanishes with a whisper and a blade that no one saw coming. Both lived hard, fought dirty, and smelled questionable. If this strange little historical detour gave you a laugh, a shiver, or just helped you fall asleep without thinking about chamber pots, then mission accomplished. Hey, thanks for watching. If this story helped you relax or dream, I'm glad. Drop a comment, knight or assassin, which would you be? For more sleepy tales, click on the left. And don't forget to subscribe, so our next story finds you. See you in the next one.